My husband claimed late nights were for work, but a tracker revealed a different truth. Now, I'm rebuilding my life from the ashes of his lies. I am a 34-year-old female. It started innocently enough. My husband had been putting in more hours at work over the past year. Late nights, weekend shifts, the works. He'd come home exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open during dinner. I worried about his health, but he assured me it was just a big project that needed his attention. Once this deal goes through, things will calm down, he'd say, kissing me on the cheek before heading out the door at 6 a.m. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? But as weeks turned into months, I started noticing changes. Small things at first. A new cologne I didn't recognize, gym clothes in his car when he claimed he was too busy to work out, mysterious phone calls he'd take in another room. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, we were happy, weren't we? Then came the night that changed everything. It was our anniversary, and I had planned a surprise dinner at home. I spent hours cooking his favorite meal, set the table with our best china, even put on the dress he loved. But 7 p.m. came and went. Then 8 p.m. By 9 p.m., I was sitting alone at the table, the candles burnt low, my calls going straight to voicemail. He stumbled in at midnight, reeking of alcohol and perfume, lost track of time at the office happy hour. He slurred, not even noticing the elaborate setup in the dining room. As he passed out on the couch, something in me snapped. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a tracking app on his phone. It felt wrong, invasive, but the gnawing doubt in my stomach wouldn't let up. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. For a week, everything seemed normal. His movements matched his stories, office, gym, the occasional client dinner. I was starting to feel guilty for doubting him. Then, on a Tuesday night when he said he had to work late, I watched in real time as his dot on the map moved in the opposite direction of his office. Heart pounding, I followed the dot to a suburban neighborhood about 30 minutes from our home. It stopped at a quaint 2-story house with a white picket fence. This had to be a mistake, right? Maybe he was meeting a client? But as hours ticked by and his dot didn't move, a sick feeling grew in my stomach. I don't know what possessed me, but I got in my car and drove. The whole way there, I tried to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe he was surprising me with a new house? Maybe it was a work retreat? Deep down, I knew I was grasping at straws. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw his car in the driveway. The house was lit up, warm and inviting. Through the large front window, I could see into what looked like a living room. And there he was, my husband, sitting on a couch. But he wasn't alone. A woman I'd never seen before sat next to him, her head on his shoulder. And playing on the floor in front of them were 2 children, a boy who looked about 5 and a little girl who couldn't have been more than 2. The world tilted on its axis. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just an affair. This was a whole other life. I must have made a noise, a gasp, or a sob, because suddenly my husband looked up. Our eyes met through the window, and I saw the color drain from his face. In that moment, I knew. He knew that I knew. There was no more pretending. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in our dark kitchen, staring at nothing. Hours passed. Around 3 a.m., I heard his key in the lock. Footsteps approached. Hesitant. I can explain, he said softly, standing in the doorway. I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. Explain what? How you've been living a double life for God knows how long. How you have another family. Please, enlighten me. He sank into the chair across from me, his head in his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you. Hurt me? My voice rose. You've destroyed everything we had, every memory, every moment. It's all a lie. No, it wasn't a lie, he insisted, reaching for my hand. I jerked away. I love you. I've always loved you. And them? Do you love them too? His silence was answer enough. What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. The other woman, let's call her A, was a former coworker. They had a brief fling years ago, before he and I were serious. He thought it was over until it contacted him 6 years into our marriage. She was pregnant. I panicked, he said, tears streaming down his face. I knew I should tell you, but I was scared of losing you. So I convinced myself I could handle it on my own. Just child support, you know? But then I met my son, and I couldn't stay away. The more he talked, the more surreal it became. He spoke of soccer games and dance recitals, of bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes. A whole life that I knew nothing about. How could you do this to me? I whispered, my anger giving way to a bone-deep sadness. To us. He shook his head, looking lost. I don't know. I couldn't bear to hurt either of you. So I tried to keep both worlds separate. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop. As dawn broke, we were still sitting there, both emotionally exhausted. I had 1,000 questions, but one kept coming back. Does she know about me? He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. She knows I'm married. She agreed to keep it secret. The betrayal stung anew, not just from him, but from the stranger who had knowingly helped destroy my marriage. So what now? I asked, feeling hollow. Are you leaving me for them? His head snapped up. No, I don't want to lose you. I love you. I know I've messed up beyond belief, but please, give me a chance to make this right. I stared at him. This man, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, had shattered my world in a way I couldn't even begin to comprehend. How? How do you even begin to fix something like this? He didn't have an answer, and neither did I. For the next few weeks, everything felt like a blur, a haze I couldn't escape. My life, the one I'd spent years building with him, was crumbling in front of my eyes, and I couldn't find a way to stop it. I packed my things and moved out, staying with a close friend while I tried to process what had happened. My mind raced in circles, trying to make sense of it all, but it was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. My husband, meanwhile, begged for couples therapy. He swore he would do anything to save our marriage, to fix things, but how do you rebuild trust after such a massive betrayal? How do you come back from a lie that was so carefully constructed over years? I found myself obsessing over her, and the children. I couldn't stop wondering, what were they like? Did the kids call him Dad? How often did he see them? What was their life like? The questions consumed me day and night. They ate away at me like a slow, gnawing ache. In a moment of what I can only describe as weakness, or perhaps it was clarity, I'm still not sure, I reached out to A. I didn't expect her to respond. Part of me thought she'd ignore me or block my number, but to my surprise, she agreed to meet. I almost didn't know what to say. What would we even talk about? Could I really sit across from the woman who had unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, torn apart my life? We met at a neutral coffee shop. The kind of place where everyone's trying to avoid confrontation. We both arrived early, both of us nervous, our walls up, our words careful. She was pretty, in an understated way. Nothing like the homewrecker I had imagined in my mind. She was human. She was just a woman who had gotten caught up in something she never intended to. As we talked, something strange began to happen. I realized that she was as much a victim in this as I was. She never set out to break up a marriage, she told me, her voice trembling. When I found out I was pregnant, she said softly, I was prepared to do it alone. But he insisted on being involved, and then one thing led to another. She paused, as though searching for the right words. I didn't want to feel sympathy for her, but in that moment, I did. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was just another woman who fell in love with the wrong man, just like me. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. What do you want to happen now? I asked her, my voice more measured than I felt. She sighed deeply and stared at her untouched coffee, stirring it absently. Honestly, I don't know, she admitted. I want my kids to have their father in their lives, but I also know what we did was wrong. I know it hurts you, and I'm so sorry for the pain we've caused you. Her apology wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the confrontation I had envisioned. Instead, it was raw and real, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal were still there, of course. But beneath it, something shifted. I realized that for the first time in a long time, I was seeing the situation clearly. I wasn't drowning in the chaos anymore. I had gained a level of perspective that had been completely elusive before. Later that day, I met with my husband at our home, soon to be just his. He was waiting for me, his eyes full of hope, as though all of this was just a bad dream that could somehow be undone. But when I spoke, I saw that hope fade from his face. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. I can't be married to someone who could lie to me for years, who could build a whole separate life behind my back. I can't live like that. Please, he begged, reaching for me. We can work through this, I'll do anything. I swear, just give me a chance. I stepped back, my resolve hardening. That's just it, I said, shaking my head. There's nothing you can do. The trust is gone, and without trust, what do we have? I laid out my plans for divorce, each word like a hammer strike, driving the final nail into the coffin of our marriage. It was over, and as I watched him crumble, sobbing apologies and promises, I knew it was far too late. The damage had been done. In the months that followed, I slowly began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. There were days when I could barely get out of bed. Days when I wished with all my heart that I could forgive him, forget what had happened, and return to the life I thought I had. But I knew I deserved more than that. I deserved honesty. I deserved respect. I deserved a love that didn't come with a trail of lies. I won't lie and say I'm completely healed. The scars from that betrayal may never fully fade. But I am stronger now. I've learned to stand on my own 2 feet again, to value myself and my own worth in a way I hadn't before. And maybe, just maybe, I've learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately set us free. As for my ex-husband, the last I heard, he was still trying to balance his life between his 2 families. Part of me hopes he figures it out, for the sake of those innocent children who didn't ask for any of this. But the bigger part of me is just grateful that I am no longer living in the shadow of his lies. I've walked away from that darkness, and I'm determined not to look back. So, dear reader, if you've stuck with me through this long and painful journey, let me leave you with this: trust your instincts. If something feels off in your relationship, don't ignore it. Listen to that voice inside you. And always, always remember, you deserve honesty, respect, and a love that doesn't require a tracking app to verify. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.